It's not every day that I do two shows, but it is Fridays bi-weekly that I do two radio shows, two podcasts, whatever they're called. I don't listen. This is a Facebook Live. I'm excited. I'm excited just to do anything, to tell you the truth. But I'm really excited when we get to have these conversations. This particular show is a spinoff. If you remember, like back in the day when you watched sitcoms, they had a spinoff, like it was like a show, and then like one family member had their own show. So it's like a spinoff of Philanthropy and Focus. And I always said that I would have another show where the subject matter experts, the thought leaders, I hate this word vendors, but those who provide solutions, the solution providers to the nonprofit sector would come on and we'd have a conversation, and I'd get to understand what that person, that individual is all about. And then certainly what they're offering, their deliverables, the solutions that they provide are all about to the nonprofit sector. Now, look, I got to tell you a story. First of all, my buddy, Ed Probst, is here from Vanguard Insurance Agency. Well, no longer Vanguard Benefits. I actually just flubbed it. It's our own company. I flubbed the name. Before I even get into this whole rant I want to do, how are you? Good afternoon.
Great. I'm doing great. I guess this show is like the Joni Loves Chachi to Happy Days.
There it is. Thank you. Thank you. So you know what a spinoff is. You know, yeah. I used to love a spinoff, man, because it was like, wow, wouldn't it be great if they took that character and like saw what the rest of their world was like? And that Joni Loves Chachi, way to go. Like, you know what? Not going to make it, but a little bit before my time. But you knew it. You knew it. You knew I was going to do that. I've only been doing that to you for the last 20 years because guys and gals and people who paying attention, the show is called In Focus Nonprofit Show. But I know Ed and our other partner, Vinny, for 20 years, which is crazy to think of it because I started working at ADP in Bayside, Queens in 2003, and it is now not 2003, it's 2023 as I look down at the corner of my monitor here. Ed, that's crazy. Like that's a long time ago, man. I mean,
yeah, we're a far cry from the days of walking down Bell Boulevard, that's for sure.
Well,
Although we still get there from time to time, but
we do, which is kind of like that's a good way to start. So I'll say this first before we get started. You know, Ed is the president and founding partner with Vinny Blasio, our other partner. Those two guys, lifelong friends. I think Vinny always shares with us that they were the same height until age 9, and then now Vinny's been looking up to Ed for the last 40 or so years. But you know, the thing about it is you say Bayside, you say Bell Boulevard, and that is where we met. I used to work at ADP at an office on Bell, the corner of the Bell Plaza building, for those of you all who are familiar with Bayside. But I always tell this story that the way we connected was through the Bayside Business Association right there on Bell Boulevard, Judy Limpert, and, you know, a bunch of our friends out in Bayside. And then I always take this next part of the story and go, yeah, all those years ago we met. And now you lead that organization and have been the president of that organization, the Bayside Business Association, on top of serving on the committees and boards for Cerebral Palsy of Nassau County, CP Nassau, very involved in transitional services for New York, where you and I are very focused on mental health issues, TSINY. Shout out to Ave and Larry and the team over at TSINY. Always doing great work. So talk to me about Bayside, Ed, and what drew you, even as a younger person, maybe if it was relevant, to just nonprofit, to the service work. And again, I want to pretend like I don't know anything about you or anything about our agency, because I know a lot, but other people who are paying attention don't. So on this show, I like to feature the individual, what they're all about, what their background is, into what their business provides to our friends in the nonprofit sector. So why don't you just tell me a little bit about that business wise, and we'll start there.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it goes back to, you know, the roots of where I grew up and how I was raised. And, you know, I've always had this desire to give back. And, you know, for some people, it makes them feel good to give back. I'm one of those people. I like to be involved in organizations where I can feel like we're making an impact in the world. And it sounds corny, it does, but it is what it is. It's the truth. So I remember as a kid, Bayside, from where I grew up, I grew up in Queens, in Ozone Park, and, you know, Bayside was like a road trip for us, right? It was like a little bit more of an upscale community to us. And, you know, so from a young kid, I remember, you know, visiting Bayside and feeling like it was in another country, and we were wowed by the area. So it was ironic that when we had our first office, we chose Bayside, and I think we had a familiarity with it. We love the community. Bayside is a thriving business community that is made up of a lot of the types of people that I grew up with. They, that own small businesses, that are, roll their sleeves up and go to work. So, as well as many nonprofits that are headquartered in Bayside that do tremendous work in the community. So, to have our office there and then join the Bayside Business Association was very, very natural, and it felt good to do it. And then, obviously, as you mentioned, as years went by, we took more of a leadership role, and then I've been the president for the last 5 years after Judy Limpert had a 21-year run. And the good news is, we're growing it faster than we've ever done before, and we're really we really have a plan for the future to really support the businesses in Bayside and nonprofits.
Yeah, it's funny, having been a witness to a lot of this, it's interesting to me to see, when I think of my own growth as what I do in the nonprofit sector, and I watch, and I was just in a meeting recently, and I said, I got to talk to Ed about that. Had nothing to do with business, had nothing to do with insurance, but it was more along the lines of, I would say, sounds like a silly thing to say, but you've come into your own from a perspective of a leadership in a nonprofit organization, and I watch a lot of I know the amount of time you put in to the BBA specifically. We meet once a month for a board meeting, but I know you're doing a lot behind the scenes with our executive director, and I know you talk to the politicians, and you're out doing a lot of that. And I know, from doing that, you've learned a lot and put a lot of knowledge, that you're able to put into practice, both from, the perspective of the Bayside Business Association, but also I think conversationally about nonprofits, because in that leadership role, I think you've learned a lot about the inner workings of a nonprofit organization.
Yeah, no doubt. It's definitely eye-opening. I think the experiences we get from being involved with, as you say, running a nonprofit organization, although the Bayside Business Association is a 501c6, so it's not exactly the same as some of the 501c3s that we work with at Vanguard. It is a similar premise. So understanding the financial aspects of it, understanding fundraising aspects, understanding that just the leadership role, that it's really difficult to run a nonprofit, especially when you're very dependent on volunteers. Yeah. So, the experience that we are getting there, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I that's exactly the way I feel. Like, I feel like it's not only, the give back to the community, the relationships we in fact, are connecting with there, but the knowledge base that we're, to understand and bring that into our business with Vanguard and bring it into our other philanthropy aspirations is very important, because it allows us to understand what they're dealing with. And I think at Vanguard, that's the one thing that really gravitated us towards going to nonprofits, is we understood what they were going through. We understood that they needed an advocate from benefits, because benefits is complicated, and benefits is one of their most costly items and most important item, because their recruiting is challenging for nonprofits. So all of this, I feel very fortunate as, being in a leadership role at the Bayside Business Association, because it really helps me draw parallels to all the relationships we're meeting through Vanguard and everywhere else we go.
Yeah, certainly. And again, I think, as I was hearing you say that, and even what I said before, I'm just thinking about evolution, whereas leaders, as adult human beings, we're just trying to get better, become more knowledgeable, make more impact, as long as we're here, as long as we can make an impact. I think if we're not improving and not growing, well, then what the hell are we doing, to be honest with you? That's the whole point. You got to be better. You got to have, I don't know what I was listening to, I listen to a lot of stuff. I know you certainly know I'm always into the professional development stuff, but, it was something like, somebody made a comment somewhere on social media about having like these skill cards, like having these cards, like, as it, like, I'm not a gamer, but like, I guess like in certain games you elevate, you get like different skills and whatnot. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. And, I just, completed the REBC in our industry, registered employee benefits consultant. I know I've given you a hard time only for 20 years about all the designations and the letters behind your name, but it's about that. It's about elevating, and not just in our industry, but also just as professionals. And, I didn't know what the word quorum meant a bunch of years ago, and now, and those are, do we have a quorum? These types of things, that are certainly relevant. And once you can, who's really good at this, Ed, and we know him together, but our buddy Ken Serini, who I expect will come on this program soon, he really immerses himself in the associations that his clients are involved with. So if it's charter schools, if it's special education, he gets involved in those things. And I think that's what I've taken a page out of his book, and I think we certainly as an agency are doing and can continue to do, is just when we go into these meetings, it's not just, hey, we know benefits. We understand we understand what you're up against. So before we even go into, just kind of the deliverables and what our agency does, I want to just shout something out. I mean, a couple months ago, I guess it was a month and a half ago, you received the Harold J. Greenberg Torch of Leadership Award from CP NASA for all your dedication, certainly fundraising and philanthropy, but even the volunteerism that you've done for that organization. So, and I know, because we've talked about it, but I also know from that night that CP, specifically cerebral palsy, not just the agency, but the actual disease, has a specific connection to you and your family. And as I watched you get that award that night, and your family being there, and we were there as well, seeing you, I mean, gosh, you must have had 35 people there that night. It just goes, Queens travels, right? Queens travels. We know that for sure. But because we were not in Queens, we were in Nassau County.
Those are the same people I did the road trips to Bayside with when I was a kid.
There you go. So they'd been traveling with you for a long, long time. So seeing you there, I watched, and again, we know each other forever. So I watched you when you accepted the award, but then you referenced your family and everybody else, the rest of us in the room, the whole deal. I just saw that you have a specific connection to CP, and I saw, because I could see the future. So I saw us being in that same kind of room, maybe not that, I don't think that place is going to be in business anymore, but another place, right, where we could be in that room 20 years from now. And you're one of those elder statesmen in that type of organization, because I saw the familial commitment you've made to that organization. So what I'd like to understand is specifically, why is that important to you, certainly to your wife, to your family, and what have you learned on that journey? Being first, I believe you were on the foundation board first, and then now you're on both the major board and the foundation board. Let's talk about that, because I think it really tells the connection to the sector and to the work.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to something you mentioned before, and I was going to say, when you were talking about growth and development, and the word that came to mind was commitment, right? And that's commitment to your craft, commitment to your responsibilities, commitment to your family. All those things for me, they tie into one another. And I take them very seriously. So when I am looking to volunteer with an organization and I'm considering it, I consider it based on the commitment level I can have. And if I can't have a commitment level that's up to my satisfaction, I won't do it, because I feel really involved, and I feel like I have a piece of me is needed in order to have success. And if I really care about the cause, I need to really dive into it. So how that started was my wife, who is, the most giving person I've ever met. And how she helped raise a sister who had cerebral palsy is something that I have, great respect for. And the things that she's done and the selfless things she's done for her own family are inspirations to me. And that's the kind of thing we wanted to give to our family, is to have that, pay it forward mentality that, the world needs people that are willing to be selfless and to give back and to help, right? And I think that was one of the things I said, in the speech that night was, some people in the CP world are severely developmentally disabled, but they're no different than anybody else. They just need a little help.
Yeah.
And so that's what we are here for, is to give back and to give help. And, you know, so that's how it all started. We really said we have to get involved in something that we can use as an example for our children. And, you know, CP was a natural fit because we both had family members that we cared about greatly that were afflicted with CP. So it was a natural choice. And then once I was introduced to them and I got to know the people at the organization, it really, you know, it accelerated my my wanting to be involved with the organization. And so that was 10 years ago. And it was a little over 10 years now. And the first year I was there, it was Hurricane Sandy. So the first event that I ever helped fundraise, there was for her was canceled because of Hurricane Sandy. So I thought, you know, maybe they're going to kick me out of here on bad luck, but they kept me around, and you know, we've had a good run with them in, you know, helping fundraise, volunteering. I started off as just a committee member for our Forget Me Not Ball Committee, which is we just celebrated our 70th year. And that led to my work on the foundation board with them, which, you know, we were able to be very involved in helping them create a 5K run that has been very successful to them. They've raised, you know, over $50,000 a year for the last 3 to 4 years. And then, you know, my work on the board as well. But I agree with you. I see myself as, you know, I'm my personality type is if I buy into something, I don't soon quit. It's not in my DNA. You know, that's one of the things I'm telling my kids every day. Like, I don't allow them to quit. You know, if there's a math example, Daddy, I don't know how to do it. Help me do it. Figure it out, and I'll tell you if it's right or not. And you know, you can't quit. There's no quit. So, you know, I can foresee that too, and I think about, I envision the amount of people we can help in that time. So it's, you know, it's important.
Yeah, we've all been to those events where you see, you know, the couple that comes up, and in fact, that night there was a couple that came up, and you know, not to be silly, but they were slow to get up to the stage, to the dais there, because they were probably in their 70s or 80s, and it was like a lifetime achievement sort of thing. And we've all been to those galas where we've seen those folks that have been that connected to a mission and an organization. So I don't joke about that. You know, when Vinny and I will be standing there with you 30 years from now, and you still be, you know, at you know, who knows at what juncture you'll be. God, 30 years from now. I just did the math. That's actually, those are big numbers.
Yeah, that's a big number. And you know, Al and Tony Delicano, it was an honor to be up there with them, because you know, these are people that have been in the organization for a really long time and have helped them raise millions of dollars, which is, you know, I think you can feel pretty good about yourself if you've helped to that degree in your lifetime. You're doing something right,
without a doubt. And I just want to underscore something you said. You said you started out as a committee member, and then you know, got involved with the walk. You know, certainly I think we're talking generosity series, right? The guys, Dave Lynn, we know for a lot of years. Shout out to Dave Lynn, the gratitude dude. You know, and you know, I think in terms of, you know, somebody might get involved on a committee. Somebody might get involved by just being at a walk, volunteering and doing the thing, whatever the case may be. But you know, having had on Philanthropy and Focus this morning, Jeanette Grisbert, who's the executive director of Volunteer New York, it's not like there is no little volunteering, folks. It's about just getting involved, doing something. You know, I ran down to Asbury Park one Saturday morning. I think I left Long Island like 5 a.m. They had a walk down there, and I was just handing out cups of water to the people running by. And it was just, first of all, it's fun as hell, because I don't know, Ed, it's like one of these things where like you're literally holding the water and these people are flying by, and you're like, and they're almost knocking you over, so you don't want to get in the way. So for me, like, that stuff is like, you remember that show? I don't even know if it's still on. Dirty Jobs. That guy Dave Rowe used to go around. I think that's his name. His last name is Rowe, but he used to go around doing these dirty jobs. Like, that's what I have fun with. Like, not that these jobs are dirty, but it's a variety of cool things that I got to do. You know, I was telling the story this morning where my sons and I went over to the Waterfront Center in Oyster Bay and painted the basement of the Waterfront Center, and they had to move the fish tanks. And there's one picture of one of my sons. He's only 7, so he was only like 6, and he's like behind the fish tank. He was the only one of us who could fit behind the fish tank, because the fish tank wasn't going to get moved. It was like, you know, a 300-gallon fish tank. So just the stuff that you any of that is valuable. So I just say that to encourage people to get out, do the volunteering. You don't have to be board chair. If you are, that's great too, but you don't have to be. There's plenty of things to get involved with.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, because I think there sometimes could be a level of intimidation that people face with, thinking that, geez, if I get involved, I have to donate a lot of money. And that's, far from the truth. These, little small tasks that you're mentioning are very impactful. And I can tell you from knowing a lot from the inside out, they're just as appreciative for those things as they are for the major donors that are, getting involved can help them bring exposure to their organization, which exposure is what helps them last, helps them set themselves up for the future. 2 weeks ago, I think it might have been a little bit more than that now, just before Christmas, they had Cerebral Palsy had their Sugar Plum Ball, and my daughter Sophia volunteered as a fairy, and her job for the day was to wear fairy wings and walk around the room and entertain kids.
Wow.
She loved it, and that was like one of her first real experiences with
Awesome.
with volunteering, and I doubt she'll ever forget that. But the thanks that she received that day, she walked out of there and felt like $1 million, because she knew they people appreciated her being there, and that was a very small microcosm of her life to give up to go entertain some kids, and you could see the impacts on these kids' faces, which was amazing, priceless.
Yeah, and I think I said it on my other show this morning with Volunteer New York, and I said, to do something that is considered so selfless, but to feel good about it, it's kind of got a selfish bent. It's a funny thing, volunteering, because I'll say, there's some days like, I talk a lot about mental health and the fact that we need to focus on this conversation more. But I've had been on a rough beat, not feeling good one day, and I go over and I'll just connect with the nonprofit and see the work they're doing and roll up my sleeves, whether it be, certainly one right local here in my neighborhood where they have food pantry. And I remember going by, I was just like, I wasn't feeling good, whatever, cranky. So I picked up a couple boxes of Joe from Dunkin' and some donuts, and I brought it to the volunteers who were working over there. I just needed kind of a shot in the arm to feel good, to watch people do things that are helping out. So that was my little thing. I've worked at that pantry in the past. It's a really special place. It's called Nosh. But it's that. And that just goes to show too, though, Ed, specifically where we operate from here on Long Island, New York, for the most part, though, the opportunity where there's so many people who have so much and so many people who have nothing right next to each other, and it happens again and again as you go on the map of Long Island. And I think it's just something we need to, continue to be aware of. I don't want to turn this show into one of the things where I rant and rave about things that make me crazy, but I just think it goes to if an individual has a heart and has a soul, then you want to help, you want to be part of the solution, and you want to be part of that connection. So happy to let you respond to something like that, because I just said a bunch, but I really want to talk more about the DNA of our firm, the Vanguard benefits, and even into the new rebrand. I started the show by calling us our old name, which was funny, but the rebrand and Spirit of Huntington Arts Center, where I'm a board member, and how that all came to be. So why don't you talk a little bit about that too?
Yeah, I mean, the DNA of our firm is really, I consider us a family business. From the bottom up. That's the way we started our business. That's the way, as you mentioned, our other partner and I are friends since we're 9 years old. So it's like being in business with a brother. But a lot of the things that we're talking about, that give back mentality, that pay it forward mentality, is why I know our clients work with us. And that is the fabric and the DNA of our firm, which is why we've, done so much work in the nonprofit sector. But even for our for-profit clients, it's always been about, what can we do for you? How can we help? Not about, just doing enough to earn our fees. And that's very important to me. I've really never looked at a commission statement. I mean, that's a lie. I've looked at one, but I've really never looked in detail at what I was earning. Most of the time, if you ask what we're earning on a client, I really can't tell you off the top of my head, because it's now, that said, we are a for-profit company, and we do have to earn in order to provide this valuable service. But our DNA, since you use that word, I think it's a great word, is more about, doing the right thing, giving back to our clients, showing value, bringing services the right way, taking an honest approach. I mean, one of our taglines was always an honest and innovative approach to benefits. And, that's changed a little bit with our new rebrand, but that's always, that's what we felt like, when we work with you, we're in this for you. I've always, we're brokers, and we don't use that word that often, but, I've probably said this to you many times, Tommy, the word broker means you work for your client, right? You don't work for a company, you work for your client. And I think that really gets skewed sometimes. But I take that seriously. And that's the DNA of our firm, is that, we really work for our clients. We're here to make their experience pleasurable with our agency and provide services and benefits that are going to help them run their businesses and organizations more effectively by recruiting better and retaining better. And that's an important thing to our agency. We take that into our staff as well, with being able to just provide that very family-driven, family-oriented type of scenario and atmosphere.
Yeah, a couple of things. I didn't want this to be like a whole thing about selling our agency, but I do want people to understand some of the technical things that we do. So, a lot of the times over the years, I've stolen these lines from you, and when you hang out together so much, who said what, I don't remember, but concepts and strategies is something you've always talked about. And with my background, coming up at ADP and spending some time with a number of PEOs, a lot of what we've talked about is this term, which has become probably cliche at this point, but becoming an employer of choice, and really what that means from attracting and retaining. So, if you could start just real quick, Ed, with like what it is we do, what are the products and services we can tend to bring in, but then also how those conversations become very strategic. Hey, look, guys, I'm having trouble with turnover, or I'm looking for a different product set to attract employees, like some of the stuff that you get in, that we as an agency get into the conversations with.
Yeah, I mean, look, the crux of our business is employee benefits, and anything that touches the employee from a benefit perspective, which could be everything from health insurance, which, obviously is the big ticket item. It's the big conversation. It's the most needed benefit of them all, but it's also the most costly. So when we work with our clients, that drives a lot of the conversation, because budgeting and retention and recruiting is so heavily tied into health insurance in particular. But it could mean everything from dental and vision and group life insurance and financial products that support well-being, to pet insurance, right? And I can't even tell you how many times nowadays we're in a meeting with employees and we're offering a pet insurance product, and we get asked about, the meeting stops because we have plenty of questions about pet insurance, right? Because everybody loves their pets. Who doesn't love pets, right?
100%.
So, and that's the human side of it, right? That's when, that's one of the things that, our organization has always been. We educate employees one-on-one. That's the fabric of our business. Is we help employers because we'll educate their employees and help them make suitable benefit elections for their family that drives down costs and provides benefits that are suitable for them. So, in those meetings, I've always taken that very, very seriously, and that's really how we learned the business from the ground up, because benefits are personal. We've been in meetings where I've been in meetings where there's been tears shed. There's been, horrible diagnoses and with health issues for families, mental health issues. There's been, or just the fact that my benefits went up and my spouse lost their job and we can't afford this anymore. So, that I take that very seriously. And I think that's, again, that spills over into, from the DNA that we mentioned earlier. But all of these benefits are put in place as a perk for employees. And we're really now more than ever, because recruiting has become such a challenge, particularly in the nonprofit sector, that is not the typical highest paying wage. But their employees are so valuable to them, and they're competing against nonprofits, they're competing against for-profits, government agencies, they're competing in a lot of areas where now the playing field is very highly competitive. That benefits become critical to their recruiting efforts. So everything we do is designed in a fact that we can help support that, as well as their financial and budgeting needs. But recruiting and retention has become a huge thing. And I was just having a conversation, and I think, Tommy, you and I were on a meeting recently, and I mentioned this, but with an employer or a nonprofit organization that the organization they were working with, they started talking to us about their pre-employment screenings, right? And we started getting into, they were working with a local vendor that their they were taking a long time to screen their employees. And those days, when you think about it, it doesn't sound like much, but every day costs them money, because it's a position that they could have started, filled, and produce revenue to the organization that cannot, because they can't get their pre-employment screening done. And we were able to help them with a solution for that would speed that process up. So it's more than just health insurance, obviously, but it's really all tied into that recruiting and retention cycle.
Yeah, and it's certainly more than just health insurance. The thing, it's funny when you bring up that the pre-employment screening piece, because not only is it costing that organization money to move that person along in the process, with such a competitive job market right now, just because they're interviewing with your organization, they're not the only one they're interviewing with, and that you may lose them in that process because they're going to take that other role somewhere else. It's super competitive. And we know that. I want to ask you, I know
just onto that point, just one last thing I'll add, you're right. And this is probably the most competitive job market there's ever been. Part of that is because there's so many remote positions available. And if you're a nonprofit organization that provides services to people, where you have to have staff on site, and you're competing against organizations that can provide them with higher wages and they can work from home.
Yeah,
that's difficult. That's difficult, very, very challenging. So,
yeah,
it's even more so.
I want to ask you a question quickly, and that will bring the show to a close, because I do have a kind of a cool question I like to ask at the end too. But let me just ask you this. So, I told you about this. I went to a panel discussion from the LIA here on Long Island, the Long Island Association, and there was 3 executive directors of nonprofits that were on that panel talking about mental health issues and, some of their agencies that, work in the mental health space, but they were also just speaking specifically to their own employee base. So, I know you've shared with me that over the last few years, this has certainly come up more in conversations with our prospective clients and our clients about whether it be an EAP, an employee assistance program, or something like that. Can you just speak to that just for a moment or two about, some of the solutions you've come across that we have brought into some of the groups?
Yeah, I'll start with the one thing that I have firsthand experience with is, we all know there's always been for a long time a stigma associated with mental health, and we can come at this from 2 different ways. I mean, obviously, I see data on plans from claims experience that show the usage for mental health, right? That's one way, and we can see that the usage of mental health services and health insurance plans is going up tremendously. But then I can also vouch for it from the perspective of sitting in employee meetings all the time, numerous employee meetings, and the biggest question that's asked is about mental health, whether it be, is my medication covered, or is my mental health provider in network? And that is typically, if not the first, the second top question we get asked about. So it's a good thing. I view that very positively, because more people are aware and recognizing the mental health crisis we have in this country and are doing something about it. And if we can be part of that, that's a great thing, and we're happy to. So the other part of that you asked is what are the solutions? Well, we're getting a lot of requests for EAP programs, which would be employee assistance programs, which employers would provide services to their employees where they could reach out to counselors, even in-person counselors if they want, or just a support line if they need to vent one day. They're much more dialed in now to the productivity issue aspect of having employees that are well. And I think that's only going to grow, which is a great thing.
Yeah. So the other day I was going to see if I could look it up really quick, but the lost productivity numbers for people being absenteeism from a mental health perspective, gang, I'll share it on Facebook later on. But the point of the matter is it's astronomical, and not that that's the only reason employers should be addressing this, because there's much more of a social concern reason that we need to address this. But that being said, from a business owner's perspective, if you look at it, and if I'm a publicly traded company and I got to report to Wall Street every 90 days, or I'm not, and I'm a business owner and I got to just report to myself and my partners, well, we got to figure out how can we best be productive and generate revenue. And sometimes that means you got to make sure people are around to do the work and to improve their, again, there's two sides of that. And I think both are important. I think the social side, because of who I am and the way I feel about things, is a little more important than the productivity side. But, if we solve the problem, I guess it's okay either way. All right. So we didn't talk baseball, but let's just say this was not even a question I was going to ask. It just came up as I was talking out loud. I heard it. Look, what do you think about the Menties this season? What do you think about Uncle Stevie Cohen? You have any insight about like what the future looks like at Citi Field? And then we'll ask the real question I was going to ask you.
Well, I mean, that's probably best for my 10-year-old son, because he's even more dialed into it than I am.
Yeah.
Which thrills me, because that's something that I love sharing with my son.
Yeah.
I'm a very excited Met fan. I'm a Met fan my whole life. I was born in 1969, so now all know my age. Why Tommy makes fun of me. I believe orange and blue. It's my favorite thing in the world to do, to be at a Met game. And now with my family, I share a lot of experiences, which is nothing better. And Steve Cohen couldn't be any better for this organization. The fact that he'll go out there and do what it needs to do to put a team on the field that gives us a chance to win. I'm all in for Uncle Steve, baby.
Get it, Uncle Steve. I love it. Our friend Tom Gretsch over at the Queen's Chamber has hung out with Steve Cohen a little bit, and that's the thing. Everybody's calling him Uncle Steve. That's that is a thing now, right? Yeah. I don't even know if I told you this, and I think I did. Cowbell Man at Citi Field. I bought a Cowbell Man. Actually, I think I bought 3 of them. They're in a box over on the other side of the attic. Cowbell Man bobblehead doll. I haven't even taken it out of the box because I feel like people in the house might go, "Did you seriously spend money on those toys?"
You showed it to me. Yeah, I saw that.
I showed you a picture of it. I haven't even unboxed it. Anyway, we'll talk about that another time. Here's like the ultimate question, and then we'll bring this show to a close. Ed, what I really want to understand is this. And I've asked my 2 other guests on this program the same question, and this will be the fun question that I ask at every episode. If everything changed and maybe, I don't know, let's say you win the lotto and no longer do we run this agency and we do some different things. You have the opportunity now to go work at any nonprofit organization in a leadership role. So think about that and think in terms of what the mission of that organization would be. What is a pressing issue for you? Obviously we talked about your connection to the BBA, the Bayside Business Association, and also CP Nassau. But what would it be? What would be the challenge, the problem, the mission that you'd want to be involved with? And that would be, you would ride that out into the sunset. And that could be part of the legacy of what Ed Probst did. What would that be?
Yeah, that's a great question. A problem that I, by the way, would love to have. So if that happens, I got to give this more thought. And I'm knowing I think there's the Powerball's up to or Mega Millions up to $1 billion.
$1 billion, right? Yeah.
So you never know. You got to be into it. The first thing that came to my mind, obviously, my work with developmentally disabled is so important. And mental health as well is I really totally sold out to those 2 causes. But the first thing, you brought up baseball a little bit, and that my passion is baseball. It was my first love from a sport. It still is. I thoroughly enjoy it. Talk about volunteering. I've been volunteering as a coach for many years. I think I started when I was 22 years old. My first, I coached as an 18-year-old. I coached my sister's basketball team. So that was probably the first. But then after college, after I finished up, I started working in some camps, and I've been coaching ever since. I'll be creative with this a little bit and tell you, I don't know if I would say that for selfish reasons, things that would make me feel really great is tying baseball into working with the developmentally disabled, tying baseball into working in the mental health field. I think they're very, very vital. I'll give you an example. My coaching work, you always, no matter what, coach kids that have some kind of, there's always somebody on the team that may have, be on the spectrum for autism, could have ADHD, could have some kind of mental health challenge, or I've even had physical handicaps that I've coached and developmentally disabled. And there's no better feeling than teaching baseball to someone who really needs help, right? That needs, I can combine my passion in life, from in sports, and take that into helping, kids that need help. That would probably be something that I'd be very, very motivated to do. I have a friend, Don Landolfi. Don Landolfi used to be a prominent baseball coach in this area. He's still prominent, but he's no longer a college coach. He coached at St. John's. He was a hitting coach. He was very instrumental at Chaminade. And Don Landolfi, in his older years now, I think Donnie's like, in his 80s, but more vibrant than most people I know. In his 80s, he started an organization called Baseball for the Blind. And as I'm listening and learning more about this organization, those are the thoughts that were going into my mind. Like so to answer your question, I would probably try to create something that could take my knowledge and passion for sports and baseball and combine it by giving people that, need a chance to learn and get better. And, we know that world can be really messy sometimes because the competitive nature of people that are in the youth sports world can get the best of them. A lot of these kids can get overlooked. And that is something that I really feel great about, is when I can get a kid like that who needs that kind of help and give them more attention and help them develop, even if it's small steps, to being able to, catch a fly ball, whatever it might be. That is something that feels really rewarding to me.
100%, man. What a great question. What a great answer. And, not because I wrote the question, but I just think it opens up great ideas to really expand upon. And I think it goes to show everybody who's tuning in right now that just because you might know somebody for 20 years, you got to keep talking to each other. You got to keep having that dialogue, and you continue to learn more about each other. I would say this, what it inspired me to say to you is Ed, come springtime, I think you and I got to go out to the League of Yes out at Eisenhower Park, which is a really special organization. Christine Fitzpatrick founded that organization. We originally met through the Lindy Lou Foundation in memory of my cousin Linda, the whole thing. So, the really, really special organization. And shout out to Bob. Is it Bob Landolfo?
Don Landolfi.
Don Landolfo and the Baseball for the Blind. I got to tell you a funny story. I keep a lot of browsers open. you know me long enough to know there's a lot in my head going on, but there's Baseball for the Blind is one of the browsers that's been open since last week, and I couldn't remember who I was talking to about it, but it was you and me last Friday, now that I think about it. So look, Ed, if somebody wants to connect with us in the firm, just kind of shout out the our website, our new website, and things like that, and then we'll bring it to a close.
Yeah, you can find information about us at vanguardbenefitsyou.com. Or my email is eprobst@vanguardbenefitsyou.com. Happy to answer any questions or discuss any topics that you want.
Very cool. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody, for checking in. You know how to find me, TommyD.NYC. Instagram's my go-to right now, so TommyD.NYC on Instagram, but everywhere else on social media, Demisa is spelled D-I, capital M-I-S-A. You'll find me there, but just just say, hey, Tommy D, and I'll probably show up. Ed, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate your leadership and your friendship. Thanks for being on the show. Talk to you soon, probably in like a half hour. Probably be on a meeting in a half hour. I'll see you later. All right, bye.
Bye.